So I've been very cheeky, and we have got a few clients, thankfully, even if they're not in the video industry. But we do have. I've got 2 case studies just to share with you, just to give you an insight. So Uclear, they're actually exhibiting here. They're a long-standing exhibitor here at Learning Technologies. They're focused on providing compliance e-learning and instructor-led training. And many of their companies are big banks or companies who have a global presence. We started working with them about 6-7 years ago when they weren't doing much in the way of translation, and they were thinking about it in terms of translation at that time. And they had some expert tools developers, expert content developers and engineers creating really, really good, high quality e-learning. And they, over a number of years, have moved into a localization paradigm, if you like, and thinking about multilingual versions of what they produce as simply part of their process. And we've set it up now with them so that they use us when they need to and don't use us when they don't need to. And that works very well. So they're now at a point where they have an engineering team, they have some linguistic requirements. Each of their clients has a different idea of what quality means. And so we have ways of turning on, turning off our service to suit the way they work. And it means now they can provide services to their clients involving 15 to 20 languages at a single release. That's because they think of it as a process rather than as translation. And I can highly recommend them. They're just down there. They're very, very good. Completely different. Ray Marine. How many? Actually, always like to ask a question. How many of you heard of Ray Marine? Okay. How many of those of you who've heard of Ray Marine have a boat? Yes. Okay. That's it. So if you have a boat, if you have one of those, or a yacht, or even if you have a little cruiser, then you'll almost certainly have a bit of Ray Marine kit on your boat, and that bit of that kit helps you find fish if you're a fisherman. It helps you navigate around shallow waters. Basically, these are very, very complex bits of software and hardware that effectively are used around the world. They're world leaders in this technology, have been for many, many years. And their world used to be that their distributor network was so powerful and so ran the sense of what Ray Marine was in a particular market that they developed their own sense of, this is what I want for my German market, this is what I want for Malaysia, this is what I want for Russia, this is what I want for Turkey. And it got to a point a number of years ago where they realized that they really had to pull it back in-house. They really had to pull and centralize this idea of the multilingual versions of their brand, because basically the bits of kit as they sit on top of the boat, and the technology that people actually see day to day is the screen that shows them where the fish is. It's the documentation, the user guide, that when they're sitting there on their boat, they've got to read something. They'd be reading the manual, and they were realizing that people all over the world some of them had very poor manuals, some of them had very good ones. Sometimes the manual was in the same language as the software, sometimes it wasn't. So they effectively, the steps they took was that they started off by focusing on changing one thing. And this is one of the things that you can start working out, how do I go from this big scary situation to a situation that's better? And of course you can't change everything, you can't persuade every stakeholder that your way is right. So you look at what you can control, you look at what you can change, you change that. And they had an inspirational tech comms guy called Andy, and Andy was a tech author. He had run a very small team, and he persuaded the bosses to buy a DITA-oriented content management system that you could write modular chunks of text. So all the stuff they translated, they went to a model of creating very highly modular sets of content for that user guide. And they started with that. And all of a sudden, when they had that working in a modular way, we plugged in as the translation supplier, and we helped them translate it and create a set of assets that they could then start using. And they developed. They did it for a few markets first, did it with Poland, because they knew the guy in the market there. Then they did it with Turkey, and they did it with a few key markets, and got people bought into this new process. And once it had established itself, it rolled off, it took off. So now, probably 3 years down track, they've now got every country where they export plugged into this process, where all the user guides, the online help, is now translated and localized at the same time in a coordinated way. And we've now got to the point where we've persuaded the development guys that actually this process is quite handy. So the software developers now use a similar process to manage the strings of text that appear in the software. So that's another one. We started now working with the marketing guys because they've thought, oh, this looks more efficient. So all of a sudden it's a way of changing behaviors in your organization. We're currently, I think it's 90, I think we translate, or rather, they create 12 language versions. I fall into the habit of saying translate. Basically, they're creating 12 language versions of the docs and 19 language versions of the UI. So it is scalable, highly scalable. Okay, here's a really complex, I put something, it doesn't really matter if you can't see the text, okay? This is just an example of what a localization process might look like. It starts at the top left and it finishes at the bottom right. The circles, doesn't really matter if you can't read, that's other processes. So this is just a localization process and it plugs in to other processes. So it plugs into terminology management, it plugs into the software internationalization, which is the bit of the process you use to make your software really easy to translate, and it plugs into the English technical authoring. So this is for a software company, and the translation doesn't start until up here somewhere. Okay, so there's all this stuff that happens before you even get to translating anything. And that's just to give you some sense as to that localization is about a process and getting people throughout the business involved. If you can see the color differences, the blue boxes are things that the customer does, and the purple boxes are the things that 3DI have been doing. But this is an example. It obviously differs for every customer. So these are kind of, we're getting into the detail, the kind of takeaway stuff, the bits that you want to jot down and kind of refer to. I'm happy to give you these slides, of course, afterwards if you'd like. It's more than happy to do that. So my colleagues and I have tried to think hard. How do we just kind of, without doing bullets, how do we come down to 3 or 4 key things that you can do as an approach to move towards a localization model to help you make it easier for you to export or to support your customers who are exporting? Agree a strategy. Okay, so that's basically about get people involved early on, both internally and get some external experts involved. You want to write and build with localization in mind. So you want to recognize that whatever you create in the other languages is effectively part of your IP, it's part of your asset. Why would you just play with it? Why would you not do it seriously? Why would it not be part of your strategic planning? So think of it as a strategy and get localization issues plugged into your strategic discussions in your company. Prioritize and plan. So this is about really having to make some hard choices because you can't do everything at once. You can't change everyone's mind the first time round. You can't persuade the guy who runs the German market that this new way is better. So you need to pick your targets, pick your easy wins, and work out what's going to have the biggest impact on people. Also agree what quality means. Okay, you're going to be quite fussy about actually what are they really bothered about? What would we mean when we say providing quality documentation? Okay, what is the measure and what does it matter to somebody in Turkey? What does it matter to somebody in Russia? What do they expect? What's their idea of quality? You might find they expect less than your UK technical writing team has been telling you everyone must have. So ask the customers, get them plugged in and help you to plan and prioritize what you're going to spend resources on. When you see complexity, try and challenge it. So when you say, oh no, this is way too difficult, this is way, we can't possibly do that. There is always a way. Okay, companies have been doing this for a long time. There are virtually, I would challenge to say that anybody has a situation where they think, oh, no one's ever been through this before. Believe me, there are lots of translation, localization companies out there, like us, like other companies here, who would have seen your challenges before and will be able to help solve them for you. And there'll also be other companies in your similar industries who also would have been through the pain before. Get out there and talk to people. Have some basis for challenging the complexity that your colleagues in business, your people in other markets say are in the way of a unified process. And actually, you need to start to learn to share the problems. Don't feel you've got to solve it all yourself. Okay? Now, when you start working with a partner, translation partner, localization partner, it's very hard to measure based on price how they're going to help you solve the problems. So there are ways in which you can try and understand how they're going to be as a problem solver for you and to help you get to where you want the company to go. Okay, we're down to the last 5 minutes. I've got about the last 2 or 3 slides. So this is just, I'll give you an example of what a process looks like. I'm going to give you a very, very, I guess, flippant view of this is what a strategy looks like. So this is the scenario is this is for a software company. It's a highly configurable bit of kit. What I recommend is get it on the agenda with your distributors very, very early. It's very tempting when you're exporting that with your distributor in Brazil, you don't bother raising the thorny question of whether they want it in Portuguese or not, because you don't want them to say yes. Okay? You have to be brave, get it on the agenda early in the discussions with your route to market and have it part of the agenda. It gives you a negotiating position later on. Who's going to pay for it? So get it on the agenda early. Also, start working with a company that knows what it's doing and start testing early. Test your software, see how easy it is to create a Portuguese version. Test your training materials. How would it need to be localized for the local markets? Just do little tests. Won't take much time, but it starts giving you traction and starts giving you negotiating strength in your discussions internally. Start making priority decisions about actually what do they really care about. Are we doing this because we have to, because the regulators say we've got to register this product in the local language? Or are they saying, are we doing this because actually our biggest competitor is already translating their material and we need to do it just to keep up? And you don't need to view it as an all or nothing. And I got translation there specifically there as the thing. You don't have to worry about translating all 100,000 words of your user guides. Okay, you build up from the things that really matter. And this is just an idea of a sequence in which you might, as a software company, only translate the stuff that really matters at the time. If you're selling to Spain for the first time, you've got a big Spanish customer. Okay, we don't have it in Spanish yet. What would be the biggest priority for you to have it? Would you like the UI, would you like the marketing materials in Spanish and have a Spanish-speaking sales guy? That'd be an easy one. But then build up through the software, build up through your e-learning content, through your products, and tick off things as you go. Now, the catch is, the only way to do this is to do that. Okay? You've got to have your English structured in a way that means all of that is possible. But if you have got your English structured in a way that's very easy for you to chop and change and mix things together, you can do all of those things and do it step by step and reuse all the translations you've done before. Okay, so this is, don't be afraid to ask people like me these sorts of questions. Okay, and there are a handful of localization and translation companies here at this event, and if you're going to start worrying about it, ask them these sorts of questions. Okay, I'm just going to put these up here because I'll let you read them. With the quality thing, by the way, ask to see their list of stuff they've done wrong. Okay, if they run an ISO 9001 2008 quality process, they should be prepared to show you things that have gone wrong in some form. So, you know, if they're not capturing the things that have gone wrong, they're not really working to quality. You want your life to be easier. What are they specifically going to do to make it easy for you? Another key thing is their human resources, the company that's working for you, put it this way, it doesn't really matter if you're in a specialist industry, it doesn't really matter that they do or don't have a translator sitting in their office in High Wycombe, wherever it may be, that speaks Russian and happens to know everything about aerospace industry. That's not a measure of a good localization company. Okay, what you want to understand is that the linguistic quality is plugged in somehow. It doesn't matter, ideally you want that guy in Russia sitting in Russia and being someone who used to work in the airline industry in Russia. And that's what good translation is, that's where it's most likely to come from, is people who really understand your domain. Okay, we're just about there. Thorny question, machine translation. Yes, it can be done, but your content has to be very structured and very mature and easily controlled in English in order for machine translation to be of any use whatsoever. So but it's a reasonable question to ask, is to understand that how is that company plugged into understanding the latest developments in machine translation? That's us done. Thank you very much. Basically, these are the three things, I guess the things I'd like to take away is that translation will become your enemy and localization can be your friend. Localization is affordable and it's scalable and it's something that you can easily outsource. So it plugs very well into your businesses, whatever your model. And the best localization expertise, just like telecoms and banking, is in the UK. And in fact, we're just over there at stand 78. So thank you very much indeed. I hope you have a good rest of conference and good afternoon.